So it's about convenience this morning. And when the ride-hailing apps came into Kenya, we started noticing actually there's convenience. There's convenience now that you don't have to keep thinking about having a cab guy. And your cab guy, you're calling him and tells you, Niko Theka, utanigojea masabiri. And you're like, oh my God. And this is the guy that you know, and he's the one who knows your home. He's the one you trust. You now have your cab guy as an app. You want to hail it, you hail, it comes. Problems started emerging when those drivers who now went into the ride-hailing apps started making noise. Watu wanatukula pesa yetu. Watu sisi ndio tunaendesha gari, sisi ndio tumenunua gari, sisi ndio tunaweka mafuta, sisi ndio tunaenda garage, alafu wao ndio wanakula pesa. And you're like, okay, now what? A couple of weeks back, you'd get into a cab and they ask you, imekuambia pesa ngapi? Hapana. Hii ndio bei. Hii ndio bei.
Yeah, original.
Yeah. People started complaining that some of them would even lock the doors and tell you, Kama Ulipi, my friend, I am moving around with you.
Yeah.
See? Those kind of things, you start wondering, now, Kina Bolt, what's wrong with these people? Why are you eating their money now? Mimi shida yenu nimeingilia wapi? You know? That's why we decided, let's have this conversation with these people. We called Bolt, we told them, come. And Bolt is on the hot seat this morning, represented by the General Manager for Rides in Bolt, Kenya, Linda Ndungu. Good morning, Linda.
Good morning. It's great to be here.
Good to have you back here.
Yeah.
And we're going to have all these conversations about the pricing dynamics that you have and the model of business that you run. Okay?
Yes.
Just for us to understand and to understand why you're doing what you're doing to the drivers, if at all. But Siti will welcome you with the day's proverb. Siti, tell her, the proverbs are from the kingdom of Morocco, right?
Yes, they are from the kingdom of Morocco. In case you didn't know, Morocco is a monarchy. Has a king, Mohammed VI. We will not go into the fifth, fourth. I can see Anki smiling. But this isn't one of those ceremonial monarchies. This is a serious monarchy where the king is the commander of the faithful. He's the commander of the Moroccan armed forces. He's the head of the Supreme Council of the Judiciary. He is the one who decides who's the prime minister after an election has been held and a particular party has won the election. He has the power to remove and change ministries. He has the power to terminate parliament. That's what you call real power.
Yes,
That's a real king.
Yes, and this king doesn't have a constitution like ours, definitely. Because if it did, our constitution will also have such things. Yes.
Today's proverb.
What is in the head of the camel is not in the head of the camel driver.
What's in the head of the camel is not in the head of the camel driver. What's your interpretation here, Linda?
Interesting. Before my interpretation, who said this proverb? Was it the king?
That is a really, really good question. That is what I am now going to do with the other proverbs. Every time I quote a proverb, I'll be finding out who actually said it.
Yes.
Yeah.
Thus far, I've merely been looking at proverbs for the country and not even asking who said it.
Yeah.
But I will be asking that question.
Yeah, and I ask that because, when we talk about what's in the head of the camel is different from what is in the head of the camel driver, you said?
Yes.
It depends on whose perspective, right? Probably the owner of the camel realized, what? My thinking around what this camel should do, where it should go, how it should behave is very different because our perspectives are different. So I suspect it wasn't the king. I suspect it's the people who own the camels that actually realized, I need to understand my camel. I need to understand what drives it. I need to understand its motivation. This camel wants to eat. This camel wants, water. This camel needs rest.
Exactly.
I, as a camel owner, I want this camel to do things for me. I want it to transport my goods. I want it to move me around. So how do we find this area that works for all of us? And that's what I see in that proverb. It's about putting yourself in the other person's shoes, putting yourself if you're in a partnership, if you're in a relationship, if you're in an employer-employee kind of arrangement. Put yourself in the shoes of the other person. What are their needs? What are they trying to achieve? And if we all do that, then we'll have alignment and we'll have harmony.
You put it very well. I honestly couldn't have put it better.
Makes a lot of sense.
Makes a
lot of sense. So, Bolt, you've been operating in this country for how long now?
Oh, since 2017, a long time.
Okay.
Yes.
Uhuru came, Uhuru went.
Yes.
Ruto came, Regade went.
Yes.
Okay, on his way out. On all those things. And Bolt is still operating.
We're
How
still
many
here.
drivers are on your network?
We have, give or take, about 30,000 couriers and drivers across the ride-hailing and the food side of the Bolt business.
Okay. In how many parts of the country?
We are mainly in Nairobi and Mombasa, but we do have presence in about 6 other cities. Yes.
So many times people prefer to hail a Bolt,
Yes.
right? And they have very many reasons why they prefer to hail a Bolt.
Yes.
One of them, Anki?
It's convenient. Yeah. I mean, compared to others, I'm not marketing. Cheaper. Yeah. Yeah, I think pretty much those I would look at first
Very
because some of them have been swallowed by some of these concerns that we're going to be talking about.
When we say cheaper, what do we mean, Linda?
So we mean, I like to say affordability because, sometimes people...
Affordable, yes.
exactly.
Yes, that's the word, actually.
Yes, because it's ultimately about, while we bring the convenience, which, when we started this conversation, you mentioned, we don't want that guy who I know who is 2 hours away telling me, okay, wait for me, I'm coming. So convenience is a very, very big part of it. But also myself as a consumer, if I'm taking the trip, can I afford it, right? We know that times have changed. Our macros are not what they used to be. So I may want to take a cab, but then if I can't afford it, then I have to find another alternative. So affordability is very, very big for us. And that's why we have to look at what can passengers actually afford for each trip, dependent on where they're going, where they're coming from, how long it's going to take.
Okay. So the pricing model, when I take one of your rides, right? So I go into my app, the Bolt app. I'm coming from, say, Westlands.
Yes.
Westland Square. And I want to go to JKIA. And say it tells me it's going to cost me 1,200. What? And later, that same ride could be 1,400 or it could be 800.
Yes.
What are these variables and how do you determine the price?
That's a very good question. So typically when the price of a trip is being determined, there are 3 main components that come into play. So one is what we call the base fare or the minimum fare. That's the fare that's going to be there for the driver to take home regardless, just because that trip happened. And then we look at how long did this trip take. That's the time component of the fare, because we understand that the longer you're on trip, from a driver perspective, for example, the more fuel you're using, the more costs you're going to incur. So there should be a cost, that is attached to the trip price, which increases the trip price. The other thing, when we look at the base fare, we look at the time, then we look at the distance that was covered, which then, in essence, means if we're moving from Westlands to Mombasa Road, that distance is not the same as moving from Westlands to Thika. So there is no way the price can be the same for both. So when we're looking at the total price of the trip, those are the 3 things that have to be put in play to get the trip price.
The time, though, are you predicting the time it's going to take?
Yes. And so this is where, technology and AI comes in and really helps a lot, because we're able from the back end to look at things, predictively, right? Not reality, but you can look at things that, like traffic, for example. If the roads seem to be very congested, then you can estimate that the time is going to be longer. If it's raining, time is likely to be longer. If it's in the middle of the day and people are at work and the roads are clear, then the time that you're going to take is going to be much shorter. So then, by extension, the trip fare is likely to be lower because it's going to be a short period of time, even if you're moving from the same place.
Right.
Yes.
Okay. Then the base fare. What determines the base fare? And does it also change? For example, every 14th, EPRA will give us an announcement about the cost of fuel for the next 30 days.
Yes.
And NTSA may record some new fees for, licenses and all. Does that affect the base fare?
So what we look at when we're looking at the base fare is we look at ultimately, depending on the kind of vehicle this driver drives, how much are they earning? Because we recognize that if drivers are not earning sufficiently, they are going to leave the platform. It's a free platform, right? We don't employ drivers. Drivers come and work with us if and when they want. And so we know that to have a business, to have people with us, they need to be taking something home at the end of the day. It's about what's in your pocket at the end of the day. So those are the factors that we look at. And to your question, some of the factors that affect the earnings of the driver is exactly that. What is the fuel price? What is the maintenance price of the car? Are there additional, fees and levies that, a driver needs to take? And all those things we put into our model that, kind of predicts the earnings that the driver would have at the end of a day, week, month, year. And that helps us to estimate for each category, because you might realize that in our app, there are different car categories.
Yes.
So for each category, then we're able to say, this is what the minimum fare should be. So that then when we add on the additional components, the driver is actually going to make sufficient earnings.
Sufficient.
It's a very deliberate choice of word.
Yeah, very interesting, that word. I'm looking at in August 26th, the platform, Bolt, increased earnings for drivers by 10%.
Yes.
Is it?
Yes.
To cushion them from rising operational costs, which means, of course, you put into consideration all these things you're saying.
Yes.
For example, you gave the extra 10%, a trip that would ordinarily cost around 200 shillings will grow to, of course, about 220, representing 20 shillings increase. Now, this increment, and this is your words, I believe these are your words. You said the fare adjustment is not just a price change, but also a step towards acknowledging the value our drivers bring to the platform every day. This looked to me like a positive move. However, as a consumer, in September, we're in October, right?
Yes.
Just last month, there was another uproar.
Yes.
There's an outcry, and I would try to reach a driver. They would come and say, tutaenda offline. Mambo ni magumu. Unajua madam kama utaki utembea na miguu yako. Because that's the reality. So then what was the impact then of all this? Do they really get to feel it on the ground? Because you do these reviews, but still there's so many things that clients need to deal with, including agitated drivers who still feel you're taking more from them. So how does this really work?
Okay, so I'd like to maybe take a step back and kind of, go into the pricing model itself, even before we come to that. So for every trip that happens, there's a split, right? There's a portion that goes to Bolt or any other platform for providing that service, for connecting the driver to the passenger. And then there's now the portion that the driver takes.
Okay.
So by law, we have a regulation now. Every app company, the most you can take off of any trip is 18%, which means the driver takes 82%. In practice, if I use a simple example, if the trip was 100 shillings, the driver is going to get 82 shillings. The app company, Bolt, is going to take 18 shillings only. Now, there's other factors that come into play, of course. When we're looking, if you look at just one trip, 82 shillings is not a lot. But what we do as a platform is actually provide the opportunity for the driver partner to take very many trips over the course of the day. And so the more trips you take, the more money you earn. And we do have quite a sizable portion of drivers, if I'm to be very candid, who have no issues. They are actually quite happy with, partnering with us. We've seen them grow. You are on a border. Now you have a car. Now you have a fleet, 2+ cars. There's several of them. But we also know that there's others whose story is not the same. And I'll tell you why. Because again, it goes to what is the cost? After you take that 82 shillings, how much of it do you actually get to keep as a driver? Now, if my car is mine as a driver, I don't have a loan. It's an economy car. My maintenance costs are low. I can manage myself, right? And we even see take homes of 70, 80, 100K for some drivers at the end of the month. But if my car is not mine, it's your car. You're telling me every day, Linda, I don't care. You need to give me 1,000 shillings. Then, out of the money I made every day, I have to give you 1,000 shillings and fuel Ndungu.
All right.
And depending on, how we agree, you might also tell me if the tire bursts, by the way, Pia will replace your tire. So those are the things that sometimes cause the noise. And so what we're trying to do as a company is look at what are the issues? Because everyone says price. But is it really price? Because if it's working for some and not others, then maybe we're looking at the symptom instead of the actual cause of the problem. And so we've realized one of the things that really plagues a big proportion of our drivers is lack of vehicles. And so we've brought in programs that are actually going to help them. So these are the things that we're doing. But of course, the effects cannot be seen now.
All right.
So the driver who still has to pay their 1,000, 2,000 shillings to whoever they're renting a car from will say, this thing didn't help me. And maybe it didn't, just because, the mathematics on their side is not quite adding up. But we do have these solutions that will come into play and hopefully make it better over the mid to long term.
Okay. Ride-hailing apps and the pricing dynamics. So Linda has told us, so the pricing here split is 82% goes to the driver, 18% is retained by the app.
Yes.
Let me hazard a guess of what the driver has to go through. They pay insurance for this vehicle. They have to pay the NTSA for inspection and to get the sticker. They have to pay, let's include the price of the driver himself. He may have to get the personal accident cover. Let's look at fuel, servicing this vehicle. Let's look at maybe they're servicing a loan for this particular vehicle. They also need to pay school fees for their because this is their employer.
Yes.
So they have all these other things that they need to retain some money at the end of the day.
Yes.
After they have paid off all these other statutories. And then for you, Bolt, you're taking 18%. This 18%, where does it go to? Is there anything else that you pay? Anyone else? It's your app, after all.
It is our app, after all. However, we work in Kenya. We owe the taxman in Kenya. So we pay taxes. We pay digital service tax. We pay corporate income tax. We pay all the taxes that are due from any other company. And so, yes, it's our
Do
money.
you also pay NTSA?
We pay licensing fees. We pay to NTSA. The same way a driver has to get a license, we have to have a license to operate in this country.
Okay.
Yes. So we do have costs attached to these 18 shillings that we're taking off of, let's call it 18% that we're taking off of every trip. Yes.
Okay. So would you take less?
So,
Because that's what the drivers have been pushing for. They're saying, look, we want more than 82. Can you take less than 18?
From a business perspective, it would be very difficult to operate with less than 18%. And I'll give you the history of ride-hailing. When the ride-hailing apps came into this market, it was a free economy, which then meant that any company decides how much am I taking for this service that I'm offering, which ideally is what it should be, right? And back then different, apps took different rates. Now, some was high as in the 30s, some probably were maybe 12, 15 at the time. So it's really dependent on how you work out your, back end to be efficient.
Okay.
And just to take it even a step further, if we look generally across globally, ride-hailing, how it operates, there's very few countries, less than 5, I believe, in the world, that actually have that, you must take a certain percentage or less kind of regulation. And where there is, if we go to our neighbor down in Tanzania, it's right now, I think, 21%, because they tried 15%. And at 15%, we as Bolt, we could not operate. Our operational costs are just too high. Our friends, some of our other friends, could also not operate. And so, we withdrew from the market because we love what we do and we love where we do it.
So the 15 was imposed by the government?
Yes.
All right.
Okay. So the government said, after a lot of, lobbying and all this, they said 15% or nothing. So we're like, okay, cheers. We understand, we appreciate, we cannot. And so we left. And a few others left. And the interesting thing that happened is that after a couple of months, I think it was about 5 or 6 months, the driver partners themselves went to the government and said, these apps need to come back. We have no way. We're making a living, but we're not making as much when we had these platforms to facilitate us. And so, the app companies came back to the table and a discussion was had, and that's how it moved up to the 20s. So to your question, can we take less? It's really not possible to do business with less than 18%. Okay. Just looking at all the operational costs, because it's a tech platform. There's a lot of tech that goes behind it. There's a lot of people that have to run the tech. There are a lot of, me's. We have to keep the lights on. So if we think about it from a business perspective, we cannot even break even at,
Let me ask this question. When you onboard your partners who are your drivers, what sort of training or what sort of information do you give them? Because I am assuming that when people sign up with the app,
yes,
everything you're telling us is something they should understand. But is it told to them? Do they understand it?
And that's a good question. I do think, yes, we do. We tell them, right? But I do think that sometimes what happens, the excitement of starting a new thing, like when you're starting a new job and you've gotten employed and the employer gives you lots of paperwork and you just sign, you don't even read, right? And later on, when you've gotten the hang of the job, when you're settled mentally, that's when an employee sits and actually reads the contract. What did my contract say? What did I agree to? Generally, right? Because it was exciting. It's something you want to do. There's potential. Someone has told you that this thing is good for you. But then maybe you didn't take the time to understand how does it become good for me? And so some of the things that we're trying to do in order to help the message to sink home of how these things work and how you get the most out of it, because it's like any other hustle. You get the most out of it if you understand what you need to put into it and how you need to do it. So then we not only train the drivers at the start where emotions could be high and excitement is high. We also try to do it continuously. And we try to do this like via the app, basically. Just give all these pieces of information in bite-sized pieces over time.
Okay, just walk us through it.
Yeah.
What does this education look like when it's transmitted or when it is processed through the app? And how is it that you can understand whether the drivers have actually taken in the information that you want them to take in? And perhaps if there's feedback about whatever it is, how do you get to interact with all this?
Okay, so what happens typically when we're starting off is there's two types of training. There's online and there's in person. So if it's the one that's happening online, it's you're reading through. And as you're reading through, you have to answer like a series of questions to test your understanding, to see if you've got it or not. And so while we recognize sometimes it's, you can ask your friend, what was the answer for that one? And then you put it in, right? And that's why we try and supplement it with in-person, which then means that, we invite our drivers to our engagement center, which we have here at Westlands, and then we talk through these things. And that's when people come and ask, hey, I don't understand how this thing works. I don't understand where my money is going. I don't see it clearly. And so some of the things that we can action and take feedback on, then we do. If the drivers say, we don't really, when I look at my app, I can't tell how much I made, how much is mine, how much is Bolt, then we take that kind of feedback, we take it to our product developers and try and see if we can make it more clear. Because at the end of the day, what we realize that drivers are most interested in is understanding how much did I make?
Yeah.
How much of it is mine?
Yes.
And how much of it is yours, and how much of it, do I need to pay taxes, for example. So we try and clarify some of these things. We try and demystify. We try and help in the understanding of, there's a percentage that has to go to Bolt, there's a percentage that comes to you, and all these kind of things.
Is there a mechanism for getting feedback from the drivers? Let's say, for instance, most drivers, now I'm speaking as somebody who uses cabs daily.
Yes.
Okay?
Yes.
Is there feedback that or is there a mechanism for getting feedback from drivers regarding what they usually feedback as far is what they're unhappy with?
Yes.
They very rarely tell you what they're happy with.
Yes.
But is there a mechanism for you to receive and then even to respond to feedback that drivers have regarding the things that they would like to see changed or the things that they're unhappy with?
Yes. And the most direct one is actually when we speak with them. But we do have other channels where, for example, if a driver wants to share sentiment, they can write to us on our, customer support email. It's there. We do have surveys that we send out every so often. On the app, on the driver app, you can actually go and leave feedback. So there are different channels that we provide for drivers to give us feedback, which, to your point, is what they're unhappy about. Because we also want to understand what they're unhappy about so that we can solve it. Because the nature of our relationship is it's a mutual relationship, whether we like it or not. I sometimes get heat for saying this, but it's like a marriage, right? Whether it's good or bad, like you need each other. So let's just work it out. Let's understand what's the core issue. If I'm unhappy with you, if you're unhappy with me, like let's dig deep. Let's understand each other. Let's solve. So we try and create as many avenues as we can to hear and action what they are telling us.
Siti, can I do a follow-up on that one? Just a quick one. So this far you have come, it's been quite a number of years.
Yeah.
Is it working? Do you think you need to change how you're then working with this partner in marriage? In as far as things are progressing, are they getting unhappier?
Yeah.
Are they losing confidence? Do you think that if you, in retrospect, look at how you're partnering, there is need then to sit and reason together for a better progressive way? Are these platforms really working?
So I will say this. Unhappy people are the loudest people. And so the unfortunate reality is we do have a portion of drivers that are unhappy.
Okay.
It's a smaller portion of drivers. And it's not to say we don't care about them. We care about all our driver partners. But, when I look at the numbers, it's a small portion of drivers that are unhappy. And they do make a lot of noise. And my actually primary concern is that now it's at the level where they're making it difficult for other drivers. So that we're very concerned about. And that we're looking for ways to manage, right? Because we want a mutually beneficial relationship.
Yes.
And for the most part, honestly, it is a mutually beneficial relationship for most people. So we try and understand, okay, the ones that it's not working for, what can we do? How can we help?
Right.
Yeah, because at the end of the day, it is a business. So the fact that we are here for this long, and we're not the only ones.
Right.
And there's lots and lots of people who are trying to get into this space. It means something is working. So, but for us, because, we've been in it for a while, now it's about, let's fix the issues. It's always, the person who's the oldest or maybe the biggest, you're the one who has to fix for everybody else.
Yeah.
Exactly. So we want to fix it. Well, that's what we're here for.
Latif, I'm sorry. I'm looking at a practical. Because there's something you said when you were beginning this and introducing her on the offers and the how do you call this? Discounts?
Discounts.
I personally use both as well.
Yes.
But look, I'm giving an example here. So I am taking a bolt from here, Standard Media Group, Standard PLC to Fayetteville Estate around Kilelashwa. And it's the original price is 720. But because I don't know if I'm a very good client, I'm supposed to pay.
And it's customer service week.
Oh, great. Yes. So a whole whooping, I don't know, because now what I'm supposed to pay is 580 from the 720. How much, guys? 200 and what? 100 and what is, how much is chopped off?
For 140.
140.
Yoyote?
Yes.
Yeah. So I take a cab and I tell the driver, it's customer service week. All right. How much are you taking from the 580? How much is he taking? And do you think they get the customer service, vibe right now?
Okay. So I'll dissect that.
And how does the discount work really? Because,
let's start there. I think that's a critical part to address. And what I would want to say to this is that every discount that is offered on the platform is paid for by us as Bolt. So the price that you saw, the 700, that's what ultimately is the trip price. Whatever discount is there is us as Bolt covering it. So it doesn't reduce the earnings of the driver of the on that particular trip.
Oh, interesting.
Yes.
So the trip will still be at 720.
720.
And the driver will take 82%.
82%
Of
of that
720.
720.
Not 580.
Not 580.
Not 580.
Okay.
No. Yes. So that
Do the
is.
drivers know this?
They do. They do know this. Yes.
But why do they then complain that, you're giving us too many discounts and they end up suffering?
So it's two things I would say. The first one is that maybe the timing of when this money comes in. Because typically what happens is, because now the 140 is sitting with Bolt, this 140, just keeping it very simple, the driver can withdraw it once a week for free. If they want it right here, right now, and they've made a withdrawal this week, then there's a small charge attached to it, because we use a technology platform, an additional platform, to help us to facilitate those transactions. So if you want to withdraw, like you will withdraw via M-Pesa, there's all these costs, right? So we are only, as a business, able to offer the free withdrawal once a week. So it could be a timing issue, because a lot of our driver partners, you want your money every day, right? So if I will get my money less that small withdrawal charge today, then I will feel I will not get the full amount.
This
And
withdrawal story, I don't get it. So first of all, how are you going to pay for your trip? Cash?
Via M-Pesa.
Via M-Pesa.
Yes, I think that is
means,
cash.
and you send it not to a pay bill or to you,
No.
Send
it's
to
to
the
the driver.
So yeah, to
Right?
the driver.
So
number.
that's like saying we're paying cash to the driver.
Yes.
Are there other modes of payment? Of course, there's a card.
Yeah.
Yes.
You
there's
got
a
to
card.
touch your card,
Yes.
or you pay directly to the driver.
Yes.
So when she does the 580 trip
Yes.
and not the 720,
Yes.
at what point will you give the driver
The 140.
the 140?
Okay. Now, that's a good question, because then the driver has 580. Now, if
you do your math.
Yeah, now this is a complicated math problem. So if we take, the driver was supposed to pay us
720.
18% of 720. So basically the driver from that trip owes us 100 and, let's call it 130,
Okay.
right?
Owes you.
Yes, because their portion was 82%.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, of the 700. Let's use simple math.
No.
Let's do
Or
that.
we
Yeah,
follow
yeah,
this.
okay.
We'll go with
Okay.
this because this
Yeah,
is a
we'll go with
practical
that.
Okay,
case.
fine.
It was going to be 720.
720.
If Anki had actually taken that trip and paid 720,
Yes.
she'd have given the driver 720.
Yes.
He'd have kept 82%,
Yes.
and he would have paid you
Yes.
the 18%, which is
Yes.
130.
130.
Okay.
Okay. Right now, what he has in hand is
580.
580.
Yes.
And so we basically, I need a piece of paper to keep track of
yeah,
this
sure.
mathematics. So that we take it properly.
Yes.
Yeah.
Excellent.
Good customer week feeling.
Okay.
Yeah.
So basically the trip fare was
It was 720.
720.
I got a discount. It was actually 710. Oh, it's changing. It is
Let's-
changing.
let's
Yes.
walk- let's
Okay.
walk
Let's
through
walk
it.
Let's work with what was
720.
there.
Okay,
Yeah,
720
right?
after the discount was a 580.
Yeah.
Okay.
Discount. Then fare after discount is 520. So basically, we're saying that the driver should have gotten 82%, 82 of 720, which is 590, right?
Yeah.
To driver. And we're saying that Bolt is refunding the discount of 720 minus 520, which is
580,
580.
580, sorry,
which is 140.
which is 140.
Yeah.
So, basically, Bolt is supposed to get 18%, and the driver gets 82%. So,
Yes.
18% of the 720 is roughly 130,
Yes.
right? And we're holding the discount of 140 shillings.
Yeah.
So what happens is there's something that we call the net effect. So instead of giving this driver the 140, so that the total of the fare is, 720, and then they give us back what they're supposed to give us, which is 130, we do a net, right? So then we say we're holding 140 shillings, but you owe us 130 shillings. So in effect, what you need from us is
10 shillings.
10 shillings.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
Okay.
And actually, also, that was a very good example to explain sometimes what happens and why they say that they don't see the discount. But the reality is, you would still have paid that money because you still owe, for every trip, you have to pay 18%.
Yeah.
That's how it operates.
So how do they pay you? When we pay in cash, at what point does the driver remit the cumulative 18% for the day?
They can choose to do it whenever they want. So they can upload, using M-Pesa to the mobile wallet, so that then we get the money. So you can do it after a trip if you want. You can do it after a day if you want. But basically, we have thresholds beyond which we don't allow you to stay with your commission for too long, because we recognize that the more debt you have, the more likely you're going to walk away. Yeah, because it'll be too much.
And also, you're running a business, you also need the cash to come in.
Yes.
Final question. Of those that are very loud, the drivers who have grievances and they're loud, and you're saying those loud ones are very loud.
Yes.
What's the one issue that they're loud about?
It's the loudest.
Price. It's always.
So what do they want? Do they want us to? Do they want Ankidori to pay 1,000 instead of 720?
Yeah.
So they can earn more, or do they want you to take less than 18%?
So they want Ankidori to pay 2,000 shillings, not 1,000 shillings. Let's start there. Yeah. No, like seriously. I mean, we're being real.
That's the board they were giving us.
Yes. So they want very high fares, and to be fair, you can understand why. And I always like to give this analogy of, I'm an employee, right? If I get paid 10,000 shillings, I want the employer to pay me 100,000 shillings. Like, this is what I want, right? And it's valid. What everybody wants is valid, but sometimes it's not practical, because we cannot ask passengers to pay what they cannot afford. Otherwise, the whole thing fails. So there is that first piece. And then the second piece sometimes is on the discounting, right? So they don't want the discounts for this very reason. Because myself as a driver, I want to manage my money. I want to manage my debt. I don't want you to tell me, you owed me, I owed you, some of them, it's very interesting, because some actually really appreciate it. And they're like, you know what, in fact, I've been in cabs before. I was, a bit in the front, and they tell me, you know what, I'm so happy this is a card trip, because now I will give these people their money and they leave me alone, and then I make my money. The ones who understand it use it actually for their savings, for their, financial management. The ones who don't, they're like, leave me alone. I want to manage my money the way I want. So there's those two pieces.
The problem that you have is that there are very many players, and all these drivers tend to have all these apps.
Yes.
So they compare. Because I know there are apps that charge more than you do.
Yes. True.
Okay? For the same trip. Now, if that is what the drivers consider to be of use to them, then perhaps those of you who keep having these problems with your drivers need to spend a little more time and energy in getting your drivers to understand these details better. Because sometimes the big problem is just one of misunderstanding.
I wonder,
and 1 hour is not enough, Linda.
Yes.
Our time has come to an end. You need to come back.
Yes.
We need to continue having this conversation. In fact, very many comments that have come in on even our live stream.
Yes.
So let's just say, can we have a date with you again next week, Wednesday?
Let's
Same
do
time?
it. Let's go.
Right?
Yes.
Let's have Bolt on the hot seat again next week. Let's address these issues, and let's see if we can all get to understand. Because so far now I can see the 1882%. I can see the discount and all discount. I can see the pricing. I can see it. But let's have this conversation, and maybe there's something, maybe I think I'm seeing, but I haven't seen a thing. Linda Ndungu is the general manager for rides at Bolt Kenya. She's been our guest. We'll be talking about the pricing model and addressing the concerns of the drivers. There are very many other concerns of the customers as well, right? And we'll have to address those as well.
This is the Situation Room, the only way to start your day.